Well, hello everybody, how are you? How is it already March? Happy March the 1st, it's a new month. The pace of this year has been so interesting, hasn't it? I remember saying in January how we really needed to enjoy the slowness because once planets started moving direct at the end of January, things were going to really get quantum and the pace was going to go crazy. And my goodness, hasn't it? I literally can't believe I'm sat here on March the 1st with you all about to talk about some really big astrology that's going on this month. So thank you for being here, and this is a recorded session. I'm recording it, as you can see, in the glorious daytime. It is March the 1st. I'm recording it at 11:20 a.m. my time. The reason for that is that I'm going to stream this as a premiere. If I do it live for you, it ends up being really late at night for me and for you guys in the UK, and I want to be on the ball. So what I'm doing is recording it, and then I'm going to stream it for you, and I will be on the live premiere stream in the chat. So if you have questions, you can ask present me while past me is talking to you. So a little bit back to the future, but hopefully you get the picture. I tend to work with lunar months rather than calendar months. As an astrologer and as someone innately interested in nature cycles, that makes way more sense to me than working with actual calendar months, which really were more of a system for governance and a system to do with religions in the 15th and 16th centuries. But the concept of March as a month is really resonating with me so hugely right now. So I wanted to offer you a little session today to talk all about it, to talk about what's coming up on the horizon. We have got some enormous astrology, the biggest we've had for years in 2023, and actually most of it's happening this month. So I really wanted to talk to you about these themes as they unfold so we can get a little bit of a heads up on them and to understand what it is that we can do with them personally. I find astrology to be so useful both after the event, so we can help get some perspective and reflect, but also really, particularly in the case of what's going on in March, it's a chance for us to really kind of look forwards and to prepare ourselves and make space for some of the new ongoings. So there is a lot to get through, so have your notebooks ready. I'm going to make sure to send the recording through with some timestamps, which will help you jump through the various different things I am going to talk about today. And if you have any questions, as always, you can drop them into the chat when you're watching this. I do come back to the chat even after the event. You can always send me an email, jane@silenceandnoise.co.uk. If you have my Instagram @_silenceandnoise_, you can catch me there. And of course, what I'd really like you to do is to stay as part of this Substack community, which has been so amazing for me. I was writing a lot at the beginning of the year, and it's slightly slowed down a bit the last few weeks. But as you're going to see from the astrology, I know there's a reason why that's the case. And I really feel Substack is such a beautiful place to share information, videos, content, and to really start to build a community. I'd love you guys to talk to each other too. So let's push through. I've got a few notes in front of me, so if I'm looking down a bit, I promise I'm not texting or not paying attention. I just would like to keep on my notes today. There is so much to do, and I want to make sure we get through everything. So what I'm going to do is to run through a little bit of an overview of March, what's happening. We're going to go through some individual events, the dates they're dropping in, and what you might expect from them. And then at the end, what I want to give you today is a little sound bath, which I'm going to record right over here in my shala. There's such a lot going on, and one of the reasons I love sound and astrology, apart from the fact they're innately intertwined energetically with the physics of nature, of the patterns of the universe, I find that actually sound can really help us integrate and understand some of these really big concepts that are coming in. I know I'm talking fast today, I can already feel it, and there's a lot to get through, so maybe put this on slow-mo and definitely do the sound bath at the end, and you're going to find that helps you really get into the detail and take what you need and leave what doesn't, because remember, not everything is for everyone. So March is always a great month, I think. It often gets started fully in winter, and I was just talking to my sound group this morning about this. They were all from Germany, and they were saying, you know, God, it's like snowing, it's so intense in southern Germany. And I remember my first winter in Cornwall about 5 years ago now, or 6 even. I remember getting snowed in. Easter was really early. I really remember Good Friday being that first weekend of March. And I was completely snowed in, like fully. I had to gaffer tape the doors. There wasn't enough food. It was crazy. In March, I'd never seen anything like it. And I also remember being at university a solid 20 years ago now, and a whole group of us sitting outside at the end of March and getting fully sunburned. And I mean like Brits in Benidorm sunburn. It wasn't pretty. And we really had underestimated actually how powerful the sun can be in March. And I think that's so interesting. You know, it's this real transitional month. We have, the beginning of it does often feel like it's fully in winter. And I mean, I've been in India since before Christmas now, so I don't really know what the weather's doing in terms of my personal experience in the UK, but some of the, like for example, a friend of mine yesterday posted a beautiful frosty morning, which looked gorgeous. But I was like, wow, that looks like proper winter. And yet I know that, you know, March is the best surf month, and by the end of it, it's going to be super beachy and Balinese everywhere in Newquay. So it's really interesting. It's definitely very different beginning to end, right? And that's no surprise, because actually during March, we transition from Pisces, which is the 12th house, which is all about the kind of endings, the closing of the cycle, into Aries, which is the first house. So this is the dividing line in the astrological wheel. This is the astrological new year. So the beginning of Aries season is in theory nature's new year. It's when we begin, when we begin to move through the ends of where we have been, and we start to ignite and get into cardinal energy for something new. So we begin in Pisces season, where we are right now. The sun is in Pisces. We have had the Pisces new moon already, and we are in this state of reflection. Pisces is all about the kind of the ethers. It's very watery energy. It's a water sign, and it's all about evolution, absorption and transmutation, alchemizing what we have been learning and growing through in our journey through the zodiac since last April. And now we're reaching the end of this journey, the finish point. So what are we doing with it? What have we learnt? And it really does feel like we have this couple of weeks more for inner vision, intuition and reflection. And it came up again in my session this morning. They're always such good barometers of the general energy. And I've been feeling it myself. As I said, I was writing so much and being really prolific on my output. And the last week or so, since the Pisces new moon, I've just felt myself going inwards. And actually, it is a time of reflection. It's a time to observe what's been going on. This, what for me has been an incredibly intense and challenging year, 12 months. This is now the bit to kind of sit and go, okay, what has been happening? How do I feel? Where are my reflections? Where are my learnings? What am I carrying forward, and how, most importantly, and what am I leaving behind and why? So it's really natural to feel like we're in a bit of a state of pause right now, a little bit of a limbo. And I know I am, and I think because I know I've only got 2 weeks left in India after this endlessly extended trip, I definitely now feel I'm a little bit on that borrowed time, and that I can sense the shift coming. And I feel like I always knew in a way that I was going to do this without knowing that I knew, because I'm going to arrive back in the UK pretty much bang on the spring equinox, which is the ignition point, the point of pushing forward, putting all those reflections down, going, okay, we're done now. How do we now turn this into life, into actual manifested dynamic action, aligned action? How do we begin to transmute that journey that we've been on into something new? And it's important to say that I think it's not so much a clean break as a new journey, or an evolution of the new journey. We are moving from one experience. We're not just bringing down the guillotine and that's the end of it. The Pisces season is an ending, but it's also throwing some things forward into the future. So really try and think of it kind of like Doctor Who regenerating. You know, it looks different. There's a new face, probably a new fashion. But it's still Doctor Who, you know, it's still your life, you're still on your journey. It's not like that's just a line and that's the end of it, but it's just a new shape. So that's what March is this journey from reflection into action, from transmutation through alchemy into aligned dynamic manifestation. So it's really different energy. No wonder it feels so big and different beginning to end. So the moment the sun moves into Aries is the mark of the spring equinox. This is a new solar zodiac dawn, and it's cardinal filled fire energy that represents that fresh page. I'm doing my fire today, as you can see, starting to shift into fire colours and bringing fire energy up. And you can do that as well. You start to call the fire in. You can do that with things like chili and looking at eating kind of orange and citrusy fruits and things that feel like heat in summer. So the equinox can shift around according to the physics and astronomy, and it can be up to a couple of days different each year due to the physics of the Earth's orbit. This year it's going to fall exactly at 9:25 p.m. on Monday the 20th of March, and that's GMT. So 9:25 p.m. on Monday the 20th is the actual equinox. And then less than 24 hours later, the following lunchtime, we welcome the new moon in Aries, which signals the beginning of a new lunar zodiac year. So we're moving into the new solar astrological year, and then almost in the same breath into the new lunar year. And this is really big. This doesn't always happen. We are in a cycle mathematically at the moment of new moons occurring at 1 degree of a sign, or 0 to 1 degree. And that's really quite exciting. As you know, 0 and 1 is the ignition points. It's the start. It's literally on the start line, waiting for the gun to fire. So it adds an extra kind of potency to this new beginning, the fact that the new moon is right on top of the equinox and it's a 1 degree new moon. So this year, the equinox and the new moon are framed on both sides in both directions with some absolutely huge and really rare transits astrologically, as well as a lot of fascinating aspects. And remember that an aspect is where two planets or luminaries, or often more than two, are interacting with each other. They're having a conversation. So you might have heard this, like Sun conjunct Mars, Mercury sextile Venus. The conjunct, the sextile, those are the aspects. Those are the nature or the tone of voice of the conversation. So we will talk through those a little bit. And I think it's a good time to get started running through what is going to happen from the top of the month. So a few bits of notes first. All the times I'm giving you are in GMT, so London, Dublin, Lisbon time. So don't forget to adjust for your time zone. If you live somewhere else, or if like me at the moment you are somewhere else, don't forget that you need to account for time differences. It does make a big difference in a lot of cases. It can obviously change the day, particularly when an aspect of transit's happening close to midnight. In the notes for this video, I'm going to put a link for something I like to use for the ephemeris, and that is like the giant planetary spreadsheet, the table of what's happening when and where, which has been mathematically pretty much written out from the dawn of time in both directions. So I'll give you a link to that, and that will help you put in your time zone and adjust accordingly. So the overview, and I'm going to do a screenshot of the chart for the 1st of March and put it in here. I was going to show you on screen, but I've in this moment realised that I'm recording this on my phone, so I can't. The overview is that we are currently dealing with Mercury and Saturn in the final couple of degrees of Aquarius, and then we have a pile-up of loads of planets in Pisces and Aries. So the first thing to know as we move through this work is which house in your own chart, or which houses contain Pisces and Aries. The reason for knowing this is that this is where all the big action is going to be happening for you as we move through March. So Pisces, where we are now, where the sun is now, and Aries, which is where we're going, where the sun is going to be by the end of March, are the two houses to have a look at. And when you look at the screenshot that I'm going to drop into the notes of this video, you will see that all of the planets are basically piled up in the bottom corner. They're all through Pisces and Aries. And if you're not used to looking at charts, it's really simple to see that broadly that planetary kind of cluster, half of it will just keep moving through the year, more or less in sync with the month. So, as we move into May, we're going to see that cluster separate, and a lot of it's going to go into Taurus. Then it'll start to move into Gemini. As we move through the summer, it's going to be in Cancer, and it's going to be in Leo. And then through the winter, you start to see all of those little clusters of planets moving around the top of the chart. And this is because we've got Venus and Mars, who are moving not enormously differently to us in terms of orbits and times. They're sort of 6-week orbits, so they're a little bit longer than our month, but not crazy. And Mercury and the Moon, who almost exactly a month orbit. So these four luminaries, so the Moon, Mercury, the Moon and Sun are luminaries, the Moon, and then Mercury, Venus and Mars are all kind of travelling loosely in the same sort of field. They're not always on top of each other. They're going to overtake each other and go back and forth, but they journey kind of in the same sort of world a lot of the time. It's not a mathematical rule, but it happens generally. And then we have a really big gap. Once we get past Mars, Jupiter's cycle is 12 years, and Saturn's is nearly 30 years. Chiron's is 50, and then we're really far out when we get to Neptune, Uranus and Pluto. So those further out planets are not moving so quickly around the astrological wheel, the zodiac wheel, but the inner planets are, and obviously the sun and the moon. So what's going on where the sun is right now is a general rule of thumb, something you can get a sense of the house of yours that's been activated. So right now, whichever house for you contains Pisces is the one that's got most of the activity happening in it. And gradually by the end of the month, we'll shift to Aries. So grab your chart. If you don't have your chart, there's going to be a link in the notes to help you get it for free. So keep in mind the overarching themes of the month. We're transitioning from the end of a cycle, completion, sensitivity, spirituality, Pisces codes, into fire and starting line action. This is pass and go and getting grooving into a new chapter, a new page. Aries is all about independence, courage, daring, and creativity. And it's very childlike. It's the child of the zodiac, it's the youngest sign, whereas Pisces is the oldest. So we almost have this shift from the kind of the wise old man figure, from the wisdom of our journey, into that kind of I know nothing, you don't know what you don't know, let's just go, which feels really fresh. This is all totally consistent with the idea of coming out of hibernation in winter and into spring and light and energy. So it especially makes sense for us in the northern hemisphere when we're coming out of the darkness and moving into the light at this time of year. It's a season of action and doing, and just, you know, after the gestation and the planning of winter, which I really like. And I think even here in India, where we're in high season at the moment, we're coming to the end of the high season. It's getting really hot, things are winding down as people prepare for the rains. But when the monsoon comes, it's actually about getting stuff done. It is sort of hibernating a bit because of the weather, but it's actually where people can do their stuff, because in this hot season, it's too hot. You actually can't get anything done. So it's really, the monsoon is where the creative and the planning and the taking action and the building blocks come in for moving forward. So I love the idea that nature really supports this astrological journey. One and the same, of course. So let's start with dates. So today is the 1st of March. Tomorrow, the 2nd of March, Mercury is going to enter Pisces, and on the way it's going to conjunct Saturn. So straight out of the blocks, we have a great little planetary transit, only a quick one because Mercury does move fast, as I said. His cycle is very quick, his orbit is very quick, he changes signs generally a lot. Mercury will be in Pisces for just a couple of weeks. On this occasion, he moves into Aries the day before Equinox. So this also feels to me like a time for taking a sacred moment of stillness on the communication front. Mercury in Pisces is about how we talk to ourselves, how we do our inner communicating. So what messages do you have for yourself as the cycle closes? It's good to take a positive kind of word-based action, like writing a list of your achievements as well as your learnings. And you could make this about the last 12 months or just the last Pisces season, the last month. As Mercury is also going to conjunct Saturn tomorrow, it's also a good moment to reflect on actual learnings over this cycle, very specifically what new boundaries and limitations or kind of new shapes and structures need to come into play. So the conversation between structure and flow is what March is all about. We're going to come to that shortly. So it's really a good place to start with this Mercury coming into Pisces and straight away running into Saturn, who is the planet that helps us deal with the idea of structure, limitations, boundaries, lessons, tough love, all the hard stuff. So Mercury will be in Pisces just for a few weeks, as I said. And again, any planet in Pisces is in its more reflective stage. So this is definitely not a time for so much vocalizing, so much being out there verbally in the written or the spoken word. It's really a time for keeping it a bit close to your chest, not necessarily secretive, but just taking a bit more stillness, maybe going on a few less social events, maybe taking a bit more time with your journal. It's really a little sacred pause, as I said, that pause, and the fact that Mercury is going to go into Aries just on top of Equinox is just a big sign that this is really about holding the space for yourself before we push forward. So on the 3rd of March, on Friday, we have just a couple of cute conjunctions happening from Venus. Venus is going to be conjunct Chiron on the 3rd of March, and actually conjunct Jupiter tomorrow. This is a really beautiful kind of set of conjunctions, and it's like a nice warm up to the week ahead, which is going to be a lot bigger and a lot more bombastic, one could say. As the Mercury transit that we just spoke about is inviting inner reflection, this Venus conjunction is a really nice energy to put the lens on healing relationships, and consider this might also be your relationship with self. Chiron is the wounded healer, and Jupiter is about expansion, optimism, positivity, luck, and abundance. So having Venus in conjunction with Jupiter is like, well, how can we make our relationships, our love, our beautiful, compassionate connections bigger, more beautiful, more high value? How can they serve us more? And then straight after that, Venus moves on from this expansive conjunction into this slightly tighter one with Chiron, which is all about, okay, and how does that expansion help us to heal? How are we going to take this new big experience of love, beauty, relationships, and then use that to heal the journey we've been on in that same part of life? So it's a kind of a cute little start. It's not too massive, but it's a nice little kind of entry point into next week, which is where it's all happening. So 7th of March, put a circle in it in your diary if you haven't already. 2 massive things are happening on the 7th of March. The first happens every month, but it feels extra massive because of the second, and it's the full moon in Virgo. So this is where the month really gets going. A Virgo moon is usually one of the more subtle lunations. It brings themes of self-care, of mind-body interconnection, and of releasing patterns of worry and anxiety, and who doesn't need that right now? Virgo loves, and I mean loves, a spring clean, and this moon is your annual call to declutter and reorganize, as it's the last full moon of the astrological year. By the time we get to the next full moon, we'll be into Aries season, and it's all going to be feeling a lot bigger. So this is a very consistent energy. Virgo and Pisces are polarities in the zodiac wheel. This is a consistent energy of Pisces does the thinking, the dreaming, the kind of inner reflection, and Virgo brings that into earth reality and takes that kind of work into organization and structure. So hold on to the idea that you're harvesting what's gone on over the last 12 months. This is less an exercise in chucking stuff out and more deciding what you want to carry forward. So this Virgo full moon is going to be a really beautiful opportunity to have that conversation with yourself. So the full moon is at 12:40 p.m, just after lunch, or at lunchtime, on the 7th of March. At 1:35 p.m, barely an hour later, in fact not even an hour later, Saturn is going to enter Pisces. And if you in any way follow astrology on Instagram, you will have not been able to avoid this. This is the thing you're going to be hearing about relentlessly this week, and I imagine for the next few weeks. So here we go. Saturn changes signs about every 2.5 years. Saturn is near enough to Earth to make some serious waves and big impact, but also far enough away that he does so slowly, and some might say somewhat painfully. It's certainly the long, slow game when it comes to Saturn, who amongst other things rules time, teaching, tough love, hard lessons, boundaries, structures, limitations, and also karma, the biggie. Many of you will know I have the Saturn symbol tattooed on me, and Saturn was my first gong. I'm a Capricorn rising, and Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So for anyone that really resonates with Saturn, this is a really big moment, and even if you don't, it's going to be unavoidable. So Saturn entered Aquarius back in December 2020, actually on the winter solstice, and those of you who are keen train spotters on all things astrology may remember the Great Conjunction, which was where Saturn and Jupiter were conjunct at 0 degrees Aquarius. It was a really big moment, energetically, probably the last really big thing we had in the sky, and many people felt this was the beginning of the age of Aquarius. It was particularly auspicious, and Saturn has spent the last couple of years resetting boundaries in the collective consciousness, which is what Aquarius is all about. It's about the group, humanity's evolution, communal action. And when you observe the global stage, I think it's really easy to see some major ebbs and flows in the boundaries, the structures and authority clashes we've experienced in this part of life and collective consciousness. Certainly when I left the UK a few months ago, the country was embroiled in strike action, which is very consistent with the kind of uprising of the collective. It definitely feels like we're moving to a leadership model, which is less about individual kind of dictatorial structures or people. And I think you can look at people like Donald Trump and Putin as representing that kind of Capricornian energy, and a lot more kind of consensual group-led politics and leadership. And I think we're already seeing that in the way things like the response to the war in the Ukraine is being dealt with internationally on the global stage, and things like the Northern Ireland Protocol, and the way countries and nation states are working together in these conversations. It's broad strokes, don't quote me on politics, but I think you can see that we're moving away from literally white man says one thing and everyone follows, which is the very Capricornian energy. Saturn in Aquarius has been taking us on a new journey, which is much more about the group. So now Saturn is moving into Pisces, which is not only a new sign, but also being the last sign of the zodiac, which we've already mentioned. It's the last dance, it's the closing chapter of Saturn's entire cycle. So the part where Saturn is here to fully disperse all his teachings is what feels like it's coming up. This is what Saturn has been doing for the last couple of hundred years. He's been moving from Aries all the way through. He's now coming into Pisces, and like us here in the beginning of March, he's working through his inner reflections, his last stage of kind of journeying. What's the final wisdom, the karma he's going to impart before he begins his new cycle in Aries 2.5 years from now. So the last time Saturn was in Pisces was in the mid-90s, in fact around 1995. So if you are also old enough to remember that era, as I very much am, I was in my mid-teens and very much here for the full grunge experience, you'll know this was a time of like absolutely super visceral emotions, hypersensitivity, really raw emotional energy. Think Nirvana, think Pearl Jam, think counterculture, Camden Market, Black Eyeliner, Crushed Velvet. I'm really here for this vibe, you can tell. But Pisces was, Saturn was last in Pisces, and its cycle 30 years ago, when the world was in a very emotional state. We're very responsive. People that were born with Saturn and Pisces are really coming to the fore now, and we'll talk about that shortly, in terms of how they're bringing emotion and kind of spiritual experience into the front of human connectivity. So things to say about Saturn and Pisces general, they're not like the most amazing bedfellows. Saturn is all this structure and like challenging stuff often. Pisces is floaty, dreamy, transcendental, spiritual. they don't sit together that great. It can be tricky. And this is where I mentioned earlier, this balance, this dance between structure and flow, Saturn and Pisces. This is something I've really struggled with. It's something I've been really nervous about moving into this transit, for how it lands for me personally. But I've been to some really amazing ceremonies lately and had some really great teachings, been doing a lot of reading around this. And I went to a beautiful ceremony last week on the new moon, and another astrologer that was holding this space used a really beautiful analogy of the river, which I'm going to borrow, and I'll link her details below, and thanks. She talked about the river, and I was thinking about the River Gannel, which runs through Newquay, where my house is in the UK, and I swim in there most days. And it's just such a beautiful river, where the light hits it, you see this, it's just like gold carved through the cliffs. It's so beautiful. And actually, it's only beautiful because of the structure, because of the cliffs, the banks that hold it. If it didn't have those, it would just be this kind of liquid mess everywhere, like a swamp, bits of grass sticking out through it, or like a rice paddy field that's flooded. It would just have no shape, it would have no form, it wouldn't be beautiful, it wouldn't be able to flow, the water wouldn't be able to flow over the rocks and around the boats. It just wouldn't have that ability, because it would be dispersed. So I love this analogy that actually the banks, the structure, is what's needed to make the river flow. Even the water by nature flows, but it can't flow without the banks. And that's really helped me to get my head around what Saturn and Pisces is all about, because actually Saturn is here to be a friend. It's here to give us the structure so that we can be in our best flow. And that's something I'm finding so reassuring as we move into this transit, because it has been giving me a lot of heartache up till now. So the house that contains Pisces is going to be your focus for this season. So once again, refer to your chart, have a look. If your second house is Pisces, as mine is, then you're going to be particularly looking at matters of material wealth, of physicality, the body, of your structures, value around jobs, particularly around how you survive, how you make your income, whatever that looks like. And especially what value is to you, what abundance is to you. This is a journey I feel I'm perennially on, and I'm constantly banging up against my second house, which is why this transit has been a bit of an alarm bell for me, that, actually what I think is valuable and abundant in this life is really not what society or probably my family or a lot of my friends think is value. So me trying to find a way to put the structure around my interpretation of value is going to help me move through this transit a lot more smoothly, rather than just flailing around going, but it's all about having joy and bliss in your heart. It doesn't really matter if you have any money. I don't think it does, but actually that's a very unstructured way of thinking. So by putting some structure around my perspective, I'm going to be able to let it flow a lot better into the people I love and also into my own heart. So I hope that's a little example of how this might land. Of course, if you happen to have Saturn in Pisces in your chart, then you are either around about 30 or around about 58, and you're going to have your Saturn return in the next couple of years. So Saturn in Pisces can be a challenging placement because of that lack of natural connectivity between the two. But as I said, that river analogy is really helping me understand how to do that dance. So for those of you coming up to your Saturn return, which is where transiting Saturn, approaching 0 degrees Pisces next week, will now journey through all of Pisces. If you look at the degree you have Pisces in your chart, I can help you with it. Drop me a message in the notes if you want me to give you an exact date. I can let you know exactly when the moment of your Saturn return is, although it's important to note that your Saturn return is, of course, a phase. It's over a journey over a couple of years, and it will really be from the moment Saturn moves into Pisces, which it's about to, unless you're very early. I've got a friend and her Saturn's at 0 Pisces, so she's been kind of working up to her return already through the last year and a half of Saturn and Aquarius, but now it's going to really peak, and I think for her that 0 degrees Pisces is going to release the lessons of that return. So if that makes some sense for you, amazing. If not, message me, I can help you out. Right, while I jiggle myself around and make some more space in my clunky old knees, I'm going to tell you about the next big transit that comes up. So we have this big week with the full moon and Saturn moving into Pisces on the 7th. There's other astrology, but no one cares. Literally, that is the biggest thing that's going to happen. It's the second biggest thing happening this year. Some of you could say it's the biggest. It just so happens that the other really big thing is also happening in March. So together, it's big. Let's move on to the 12th of March. On the 12th of March, we have Jupiter conjunct Chiron. So I mentioned that we already had a little Venus dalliance with Jupiter and Chiron, which is happening on the 2nd and 3rd of March. But on the 12th, we're now going to have Jupiter meeting the healing asteroid. So Jupiter, remember, abundance, expansion, optimism. He's a benefit planet. He brings expansion, positivity, joy, bliss. He brings opportunity more than anything else. And Chiron is all about the wounded healer. Chiron is about the place from where we draw our strength, from where we have to heal our own wound to move forward in service in this world. Chiron has become increasingly important in modern astrology, and I think for me it's become even more important in the last few years, and I think for most of us it does. You know, Chiron has a 50-year orbit, so we don't get a Chiron return until we're 50, and it's really mixed up in the midlife astrology that I'm such a fan of right now, probably because I'm now in my 40s and it now is applying to me. So I think Chiron does get more and more important for us all as we approach our return during our 40s, but it's becoming really important in major astrology, and this is why. Chiron's archetypal theme is all about healing, and one could say that we are collectively on our healing journey. It's what we're here in this life to experience and to do. And so Chiron is really just our guide, our point, our arrow as to where our healing can really happen. It's a very quantum energy, named in the Greek mythology for having to kind of almost stab yourself in order to move forward. You have to hurt yourself in order to create the environment that you can then grow from. And it's really about battle scars. You know, the idea is that the wound you're carrying in your Chiron is a long-held wound. It's maybe your whole life, maybe into previous lives too. This is not a short-term, oh, that guy left me, or I got fired from that job and I felt terrible. This is a thing that's been working in your conditional programming through your whole life. So Jupiter coming to meet Chiron is a really great moment. There's only a couple of planets that have the kind of impact that Jupiter does, and Venus has just been there this week, so it's actually a really great time for working on your healing. And as all this is happening while we're still in Pisces season, the opportunity to reflect and spend time in detail with your journal on your own healing is really, really potent. So Jupiter does have a 12-year orbit. This is the first time in 12 years that we have had a Jupiter conjunct Chiron, which is really exciting. And Jupiter's energy is big picture. It gets us out of that granular detail. A lot of Chiron, a lot of our healing, a lot of our personal development stuff can really keep us stuck and very much in the minutiae, in the very tiny detail of how we progress. And actually Jupiter is an invitation to bring us into an expansive mindset, to get us out of this kind of small thinking and being buried in the depths of our challenges, and give us the courage to overcome in a much bigger thematic way. So if Chiron is our destiny, our kind of compass point to overcome in this life, Jupiter is the silver lining. It's the opportunity to see the good in the challenges. So this transit goes on from roughly the 9th to the 15th of March. It's perfectly conjunct on the 12th. And it's really a week in which to spend a bit of time with your own challenges, with the parts of life that you are doing healing in, that you're working through. Have a look at where your Chiron is in your chart. Again, that's going to give you some signposts. Mine, for example, is in my 4th house. So I know it's a lot to do with home, with family, with kind of ancestral structures, with the understanding of what family looks like. If you know me personally, you'll know that this is all spot on, as I've been really journeying with those questions this past year, as my home situation has completely changed, as I'm choosing to be in another country and away from home in the conventional sense. So it makes sense that this is now a time to kind of expand out of that kind of journey and go, okay, where does this go from here? How do I take the learnings of this chapter of healing, and how do I actually use those forward in the rest of my life? So as we move through the Jupiter conjunct Chiron, we then have a big exciting triple conjunction. So a triple conjunction is where we have 3 planets or luminaries all at the same degree point. So what we just had with Jupiter and Chiron, they'll be meeting in Aries at a very specific point. And now we have the Sun, Neptune and Mercury, all 3 of them coming together. And this is the 15th of March. And it's noteworthy because it's really the last big blast of Pisces energy we're going to get. These 3 are going to be in the very last couple of degrees of Pisces. And it's a moment of dissolving boundaries and kind of really hyper spiritual attunement. A big day for imagination, for dream weaving, perfect day to do things like sound healing, breath work, transcendental meditation, speak to your spirit guides, do your plant medicines. We've got the last couple of days of Pisces energy, and the Sun in Pisces is glowing up alongside Neptune, which is all about the illusion, the dream, and then Mercury, which is about communicating. So it's a great time to receive messages, a great time to start to channel messages. And those messages coming from the Neptunian energy, which is really about kind of source, about light, about higher consciousness. So this is really the last big blast of Pisces season before we start to put it to bed and look into the fire of Aries. So worth worth putting the 15th of March in your diary for something magical. 16th of March, Venus is going to enter Taurus. So Venus is our beautiful planet, all about lux and resource and relationship. It's about art, beauty, love, money, all the good, juicy, sweet stuff. And this is its home placement. Venus is very at home in Taurus. It's a really beautiful place for Venus to spend time. And it's going to give us this sense of kind of lux and comfort, which is a really great thing after what potentially is being kind of an introverted, upheavally energy, as we've had this kind of big Saturn and full moon stuff going on. So enjoy it. Enjoy this moment before we get into the fire. And also think about what material comfort looks like and how to embody it. Really good day to get your feet into earth. And a really good day to eat well. Taurus loves food. Venus loves food. Pay attention to the house that contains Taurus for you, as this is your focus for the practical energy this month. So when I booked my flight home from India, I've now changed it 3 times. And I booked it to come home on the 16th. And I'm really excited about this because I feel like having Venus in Taurus is a really great energy to help me reaccustom and reacquaint myself with home and to find the best energies I can in home, to find the juiciness and the comfort and the joy in being home. And that for me is a really good practical example of what working with this energy looks like. So I hope that makes some sense to you. And I have a little swig of water because it is so hot. Doing my best to do this video for you in one take. It's because it saves me so much time and having to splice it and put it all together. That's what always takes time in trying to get videos online for you. So apologies for my plastic reusable bottle. And now we're going to get into the business end of transits. So we have got a few really big things to talk about. So this is where you want to get your diary clear and ready and primed for new energy. So on the 19th of March, we have Mercury entering Aries, and this is really the starting gun. The next 3 days are the beginning of a new chapter as Pisces season kind of shimmers to a close and everything starts to heat up. Mercury is the first to start the fire, and the shift from a couple of weeks of more still and solitary speech and conversation that we talked about where Mercury is entering Pisces in the next few days is really a palpable moment. So Mercury is now going to pick up the megaphone, and after all that introversion is now ready to be like, here's all the stuff I've been thinking about these last 2 or 3 weeks. You know, I've been in my kind of spiritual center in my Pisces, and now I'm ready to share it with the world. Let's go. Drop the mic. So who are you? What are you here for? This is what Mercury in Aries is going to be asking us to do. Write it down, reintroduce yourself on your social networks, publish your manifesto. This is when it's really about I am here and here's what I'm here for. Here's how I'm saying it. It's very much vocalizing, putting words around your identity, your reason to be. And then on the 20th of March, we have the spring equinox, the vernal equinox. The sun enters Aries, and this indicates the beginning of a new cycle, of a new solar season, and also of a new solar year. This is the beginning of the solar year, the astrological year. Aries energy is the child. It's about risk-taking, it's independence, it's the first house, so it's the ultimate focus on the self. The words here are I am here, I'm alive, I'm here to be. Spring equinox in shamanic and pagan cultures is all about bursting to life after hibernation. The seeds planted in the winter that were planted all the way back in the autumn that began to sprout at Imbolc in February as the first little shoots pushed through and now ready to burst through and start blooming into the new season. This is a big step change, and this is where you're going to feel the energy really, really shift. I always love to hold rituals around equinox. For those of you in the UK, I'll be holding a ceremony actually a few days after this at the end of the week in Brighton on the 24th with my beautiful friend Betty. This will be a kind of ritual ceremonial event to help guide you through the equinox energies with breathwork, with sound, and with all of the other stuff we do together, cacao and crystals and altar. I'm going to be holding an astrological circle in London on this day, on the 20th of March, which will be all about how to land this energy in your own chart, and we're going to do that on every equinox and solstice through the year together. And I can also recommend you a bunch of really beautiful events going on. I've got lots of wonderful colleagues and acquaintances holding space to mark the equinox, so let me know where you are and I'll happily send you some links to your people. But equinox rituals, you can really think about colours. You know, we're starting to move into the warm season, into spring, and into the season where there's finally more light than dark. And you can see I'm already slightly channeling it here, going for warmer colours. So yellows, oranges, pinks, maybe not reds just yet. Think about early blooms. What's the first things that show up in your garden? Fresh florals, and then some fresh woody kind of oils as well. It's really nice to work with things like sandalwood and warm woods. and things like frankincense. I usually use a lot of frankincense resin and copal resin going through Aries season. It's wood based, so it's about ground, it's about coming from ground, but it's also about starting fire with that ground. It's a good time of year to look at your diet, your exercise, shifting your routines, your structures, what time you set your alarm for. If you're into Ayurveda, it's a great time to review your dosha. You'll probably find it begins to alter and the composition changes this time of year. In the Northern Hemisphere, we now officially have more light than dark as of this day, March 20th. And the season from now, from the spring, the equinox to solstice, is the most active of the whole year. This is when you get your shit done. Basically, once we get to summer solstice, we're in the peak of the sun, and then incredibly, we already start to lose the light. This is the lightest part of the year in every sense. I can't say it enough times. So to prepare, spend the next couple of weeks while we're still in the last throes of Pisces season and the previous astrological year. Get yourself journey priming, prepping, clearing, use that Virgo full moon, declutter, get ready for a big burst of doing. Get your list in order, get your subscriptions up to date, get your spreadsheet sorted. Use this time to be ready so that when this energy comes in, you are absolutely on the starting line, warmed up, and you're ready to go. So that is the spring equinox, but it just keeps on coming. The following day, 21st of March at 7:22 p.m, again, barely 24 hours afterwards, we have the new moon in Aries, and there's a bit of dispute in astrological circles whether it's 0.5 or 1 degree, but either way, it's right at the beginning. The Aries season is kind of already on steroids this year because of all the stuff going on, but we're getting not one but 2 new moons in Aries this year. The Western calendar only honours 12 moons, 12 months, despite our 13 annual moons. I didn't make sense of that. The Western calendar only honours 12 months, despite the fact we have 13 moons within our calendar year. So every calendar year, one sign is blessed with 2 new moons because of our miscalculations. In Vedic astrology, it's not the case because they work with a 13-month calendar. So this year, the second new moon is happening in Aries, which means that we have a new moon happening at 0 degrees of Aries and a new moon happening at 29 degrees of Aries, remembering there are 30 degrees in a sign. So literally right at the beginning and right at the end. So that second new moon is literally within about an hour of the sun moving into Taurus. It couldn't be more at the end. So it's certainly a very, very potent bookend. A moon at 0 to 1 degrees is absolutely ground zero. It's the ultimate point of inflection, the ultimate point of new beginnings. So for any sign, having a new moon in this place is important. We've been having that all year. However, this is Aries, so it's the first degree of the first sign. It's so much about beginnings, it is impossible to overstate the importance of new beginnings. There will be no better day, none, for manifesting all year. So get very clear on what you're calling in, whether you have a manifestation practice, whether it's about releasing shadows and inner child blocks, whether it's a pure visualization practice, whatever you like to do. And even if you don't have one, get one. March the 21st is the day. There is no better day for simply feeling into the truth of where you're going and calling in what it is you need to do to make it happen. And then we just keep on moving. So we've already had a bunch of pretty big hitting conjunctions. We've had Saturn moving into Pisces. We have had the solar season of Aries beginning. We have had the equinox. We've had the new moon in Aries. And now the real big home run. 23rd of March. So just a couple of days after the new moon, the 23rd of March at 12:14 p.m. at lunchtime, Pluto, the furthest planet in our solar system, will change signs. He's going to enter Aquarius. It's really hard to overestimate how big this is. Astrologers are so excited about this. You'll see people be literally wetting themselves on Instagram to talk about this. Pluto is so far away, like so far away. For so many years until the 1770s, the Saturn was considered the outer edge of our solar system. It was the last thing we could see with the naked eye. It's only in the last couple of hundred years we even knew there was anything beyond that. And despite all of our research, all of NASA's work, all of the space agency's work, we still don't know what we don't know. What we do know is that Pluto's the edge of our solar system. Because Pluto's orbit is so phenomenally big and huge, and because it's so far away, in our lifetime, the average person only gets to experience Pluto in around 4 or 5 of the 12 signs. So this is a huge moment for all. So for example, I'm 42 now, my Pluto is right at the end of Libra, 28 degrees Libra. So for anyone born pretty much from like the early 80s to the early noughties, you've all got Pluto and Scorpio, and these are very generational signs. People have Pluto, which is all about transformation, that deep cave-like energy, the absolute depth of experience. People have that in, you only get to see it in people in a few signs. So most people alive on the planet now, I mean, there's certainly a few people with Pluto in Leo, maybe some even earlier than that. But Pluto and Leo, there's, a lot of Pluto and Virgo. People in their 40s and 30s have got Pluto and Libra, and then sort of the millennials have got Pluto and Scorpio and Sag. But it's very, very, very slow moving. I can't explain it enough. People on the planet now, none of us will ever get to see, Pluto in Pisces. We'll never get to see Pluto in Aries. So this is a really big, exciting time. Pluto's been in Capricorn since 2008, and it was last in Aquarius 200 years ago. There is some really interesting science because Pluto's orbit is like a pure ellipse. It's so wonky that certain signs have a really short Pluto transit of only about 13 years, and some of them it's up to more like 27, 28 years. So hence the confusion here. However, Pluto hasn't been in Aquarius for over 200 years. That's a lot. That's all you need to know. It's a lot. So Pluto's most easily visualised through its sort of scorpionic lens. Pluto rules Scorpio, and Scorpio energy is well documented. Phoenix from the flames, death and rebirth, metamorphosis, the depth, the revenge, the hidden stuff, the grudges, the stuff we hold on to in the darkness that we don't want anyone to see. It's really, really transformational stuff. Wherever your Pluto is in your chart is the bit that's really going to help you do your evolving in this lifetime. In Capricorn, where Pluto's been for the last 14 odd years, these themes have been applied to the architecture and structures, the foundations of life. That's what Capricorn's all about building structures. It's about finance, regulation, law, big business. And it certainly does feel over the past 14 years that the global focus has been on structuring, creating, building, as the world expands ever more into these very sort of capitalist economies and principles. But Aquarius is a new rising. It is humanitarian, it's the collective, it's the earth, it's female, whereas Capricorn is so male, it's Shakti, whereas Capricorn is so Shiva. It's the light, it's light workers, it's 5D, it's space, it's collective consciousness, it's the community. So it feels like there's a real shift coming to me from the old patriarchal ways into the light. And we've also seen that rising little by little from the ashes of the past 2 decades of wanton destruction on the planet. And now Aquarius will be blessed by the long arm and far reach of Pluto's transformative energy. So collectively, the opportunity to make a difference is really about to land for us. This transit is massively about evolution, technology, and the future of humanity. It's not small at all, not small. More than anything else, it's about power. Pluto looks at where we get our power, where we source our power, and where we give our power away. It's power dynamics, struggles and power, so you can have a look at the part of your chart that contains both Capricorn and Aquarius, and you might notice that wherever your Capricorn is where the power struggles have been playing out for you these past 14 years, and where Aquarius is where they're going to be playing out over the next 14 to 20 years. So this is a preview. Pluto's retrograde is going to take him back into Capricorn a couple more times over the next year and a half. So from November 24th, he'll be solidly in Aquarius. But up until then, he's going to be back and forth a little bit. So this is a few months preview to get a sense of how Pluto in Aquarius is going to look and feel. It's a really great time. I keep saying journal, take to your journal, write it down, see how you feel, particularly about matters of structure and of power. Once Pluto gets into Aquarius in November 2024, 18 months from now, that's the end of the retrogrades that are going to affect his placement. He is going to be in Aquarius until 2043. That's a 21-year stay. So whereas Pluto's been in Capricorn for only 14 years, this is a 21-year stay. I'm trying to get my head around that by remembering that by the time Pluto leaves Aquarius, I will be 63. Just think about that for a moment. So Pluto works at the deepest layers of our lives, and he goes very slowly. So if you have got the capacity to reflect on the past 14 years in Capricorn, if you're an age where you can really see your journey from 2008 to now, and think about what structure, money, and building life has looked like for you in that window, this is a really good time to do that. What's been important in structure? What deep desires have influenced your decisions in terms of matters of authority and power? I definitely feel like I've been on a power struggle with male energies, and particularly in my life, since my late 20s when Pluto arrived in Capricorn in my first house. And I feel like it's been a relentless struggle, and actually what's gone on in the last year has really exemplified that and almost brought it to a crescendo. Interestingly for me personally, because I have an intersected Aquarius, this new Pluto in Aquarius will continue to be in my first house actually. So it's almost like it feels like a line in the sand of how I've used to deal with these energies and how I'm going forward. So for me, it feels really a beautiful transit, and all of us are going to be able to find that beauty in our own charts. It's just a case of having a look. And remember, if you would like to look more into your chart and understand these layers, then I have a course for you. It's called Star Nomad. It's an online course. It's 8 weeks. It's self-paced, so you can do it whenever you like, and you can jump into the live groups that I'll be running more in the next few weeks when I'm back from India, to ask your questions and meet your fellow astrological travellers. And I will link all of that info for you in the notes. It would be slightly remiss of me not to draw your attention to the fact that many people say that Pluto's arrival in Aquarius is like the final step in the dance of us moving as a collective into the age of Aquarius. So if anyone was under any illusion that the world is changing, that we're moving from these old patriarchal kind of presidential structures into something more about collective and humanitarian awareness, I think it's safe to say that this is it. Okay, after all that heavy lifting, you would think we're done, but there is one more big transit to flag, which is on the 25th of March. And that is that after 7 very, very long months, Mars is finally leaving Gemini. This has been a huge stay in a single sign for Mars, who usually changes signs every 6 weeks or so. But because of retrogrades going on, because of Mars's retrograde, he has been stuck in Gemini for 7 months. Bearing in mind his regular transit is 6 weeks. 7 months, Mars in Gemini. This started last August and retrogrades kicked in October. We talked about this a lot late last summer, so it might be worth revisiting some of those big themes. But it's been quite volatile energy in moments. So Mars finally shifting into Cancer, where he's in his detriment, meaning he's devoid of his natural power, is actually a really welcome pause. Mars is action, it's pushing, it's progress, it's getting things done, and Gemini is a kind of overthinking, like overactive, like fickle, kind of moves around really fast, can be really clear-minded in its high vibration. But Mars in Gemini with a lot of retrograde has been a lot of like push and pull between thinking about what we're going to do and actually getting it done, and kind of been pulled back a lot on the trying to get things done. So if, like me, you feel like you've literally been treading water, but in a tide for 7 months, hopefully this is where you're going to start to feel the shift. And of course, this coming just a few days after the equinox, the Aries new moon, all the stuff we've talked about, it's all just now forward-facing energy. So you get why this is turning into such a very huge month. So, last couple of notes on this. It is a chance also to reflect on 7 months of higher wire activity when it comes to motivation, fears, taking affirmative action. What have you not been able to push forward since last August? And what have you been able to? What's really stayed stuck and what's flowed? Maybe not very much, particularly if you have a lot of activity in your Gemini house or in your Sagittarius house. It's definitely time for a bit of a change in energy, a pressure release, and a moment to integrate. First of all, Cancer energy is very much sensitive and internal, it's nurturing, it's caring. So take a moment to give yourself some gratitude for what you have achieved in the last few months, and also what you haven't, because it wasn't its time. It wasn't time for it to happen. Everything happens in its right time. Especially if you've been struggling to speak your truth, speak up or be heard, this shift is hopefully now going to allow you to get out whatever it is that's been stuck in here over these last 7 months. So Mars in Cancer doesn't look that exciting initially, but actually it's just a relief away from this kind of quite volatile retrograde energy we have been in for a long time. In fact, Mars is still in retrograde shadow until the 17th of March. So, it's going to feel like quite a quick shift when it comes. There is a little Venus-Uranus conjunction to finish March off with a bang on the 30th. And then we're in home and dry at last, in need of a sit down, a lie down, a sound bath, obviously. Definitely a retreat. It's going to be an incredibly busy month. March is beyond hectic in the skies, and as I said, the beginning and the end feel very different. The beginning is all about this about this kind of flow of Pisces and reflection and introversion. Then we have this big bombastic Saturn coming into Pisces, bringing in the structure, bringing in the shape. Then we have everything being set on fire with Aries energy beginning, the sun, the moon, the equinox, and then Pluto moving into Aquarius, which is all about taking this fire, plugging it into the root and transforming at a really, really deep level, collectively as well as in our personal journey as part of the civilization and community of this planet. I hope that's enough for you. There's an awful lot going on. I'm going to isolate the sound bath on this recording next, partly so I can move the camera and partly so that I can give it to you as a standalone meditation for any time you want to revisit it this month or in the future. So I'm going to say thank you for joining me on this, I'm going to say workshop, but it's really a monologue, me talking at you about March. Stay tuned for next month's free workshop. I didn't do one in February because I knew I had this big one to do at the beginning of March. The Substack subscription is your container for this. If you're subscribed, it's $5.55 a month or $55.55 a year. See what I did there? And that gets you a free one of these every month, as well as some beautiful sound bath content, which I promise is going to get more regular once I'm back home. It's a little bit harder to do here because of time differences and internet, but it's all coming your way. And I am so grateful to have you here. I'm working on my book. I'm working on a lot of new writing proposals, and having Substack moving through as paid subscription really allows me to do that work. So thank you so much. Love you. If you would like to dive deeper into astrology with me, as I said before, I have an 8-week self-paced course called Star Nomad, which has also slightly suffered from the internet issues here, but which is going to be fully online for you, certainly by Equinox, and I imagine a lot sooner than that. It's available to buy online. It's from just £83. You can pay over 4 months, you can pay over 2 months, you can pay up front. And it's going to really help you tear down all that foggy, fluffy astrology language which lives out there on social media, and it's going to help you unravel your natal chart and teach you how to read it yourself, how to connect the prevailing energy, what's going on out there. So like all of this stuff I've talked about with March, how does that actually land for you personally? Not just in the collective, which is also important to know and be aware of, but how's it going to plug into you and your life? Your personal blueprint, your chart, your experience of being a human on this planet. And then once you know that, what do you even do with that information? That is what Star Nomad is here to teach you. It's what I'm here to share with you. It's very practical, it's very tangible. It's going to make you feel like you've known your chart your whole life, and you're going to know it for the rest of your life. And believe me, you'll be so glad that you did. I'm going to finish today with a short sound bath to help soothe your mind. I feel like I've been big in Aries energy on this call. I've been really talking at you fast, giving you lots of information. So let's make some space in a beautiful sound bath to allow all of that information to come into land. Usually these sound baths are every Monday. Again, I delayed this week because I knew I had this workshop to record for you. There'll be a little meditation usually built in with them all, and it's designed to help you set the week up and plug the energy of the upcoming week in through sounds so you know what to expect. Make sure you have your email notifications for sounds from outer space switched on, and you'll get one of these every single week. So if you're joining for the sounds, go and get yourself horizontal, get some headphones on if you can, get yourself nice and relaxed, and let's go into the sounds. And if you are not joining the sounds today, then thank you for being here, and I'm sending you so much love for a very beautiful and exciting and empowering and igniting Aries season.